Hey there, meat golems and vampire brides.
Welcome to another episode of Campaign Spotlight. I'm Production Master Riley.
And I'm Dungeon Inspector Jake. This week, we're chatting with Kyros, who's an old friend who was one of the first people to get me psyched up about running a campaign of my own.
We're going to be talking about cracking open one of D&D's oldest modules and making it your own. We've never gotten to play this module ourselves, and we're excited to hear more about it.
A heads up that in this episode we do talk about the Curse of Strahd module, which contains themes of sexual assault as well as anti-Roma stereotypes. We've linked to some perspectives on the module in the show notes.
Let's roll initiative.
You're walking up a quiet, unfamiliar mountain road. You know that somewhere the sun is setting, but clouds blot the sky as far as you can see. As you climb higher, the clouds become mists, overtaking the tops of trees. Soon, wisps of mist twine around your ankles, leaving you chilled. You steady yourself and trudge on, but to what destination you can't seem to recall. In the distance, you hear the high, unnerving howl of a wolf, the first noise you've heard in hours other than your own footsteps. The moon's glow fails to do more than tease through the clouds and trees and mists, and the path becomes uncertain. Skilled adventurer though you are, you trip on more than one of the tree roots that seem to reach for you. The mist gathers close now, and you hold one hand in front of you to grope blindly in the swirling dark. Another wolf howls, closer this time, and your heart beats faster, the mist catching in your lungs. The arm you've extended now fades into the gray cold, and you trip once more, sprawling in the dirt. As you fall, you swear you hear laughter all around you. But when you scramble to your feet, it seems to have only been the caw of a lone raven, watching you from atop a ramshackle post. The mists no longer smother you, and you can see now that you've reached a village. And though it looks to be a cold and bleak place, the warm glow of a firelight from within the obvious tavern speaks to some level of comfort. The raven caws again and flies away, and you can see now its former perch declaring in faded letters, "Welcome to Barovia."
Hi, Kyros.
Hi.
Welcome to Campaign Spotlight.
Great to be here. Thanks for having
Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience with tabletop gaming?
Well, my name is Kyros, and I don't have as much experience as a lot of people who you may interview. My experience probably goes back to high school. In high school, I did quite a bit of tabletop games. I don't think I ever finished one in high school that wasn't a one-shot. I think scheduling for a teenager in the early 2000s is even more difficult than it might be for an adult now. And I never ran a campaign until a couple years ago. I also do some sci-fi fantasy writing, so it's kind of an offshoot of that. Maybe not an offshoot, maybe that's a bad word for it, but it's sort of a it's sort of a similar vein of things where you are telling a story. Obviously it's interactive, but it's something that you are telling for other people and guiding them through in the same sort of way.
For sure, it's more of like a joint storytelling exercise compared to writing science fiction or fantasy.
Yeah. Along the lines of fantasy, obviously, specifically for Dungeons and Dragons, it's such a rich narrative that can be mined for, I'm going to say entertainment value, but I think it's more than that, obviously. It's a communal storytelling, and it's that's just always really spoke to me. So, sorry, I think I kind of got off track there.
No, it's great. I mean, it's a podcast. We're kind of supposed to go off track. That's the interesting parts. And so the campaign we're going to talk about today, this is actually the first game that you ran end to end.
It is, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think looking back, I kind of bit off more than I could chew with it a little bit. So what happened was a group of my friends, one of them had just ran Minds of Fandelver, and that was his first foray into DMing as well. So once that was kind of ending, we were kind of getting the tail end of that. I was like, I want to DM. I'm going to do this. So I did some research on modules because I knew I didn't really want to jump right into a homebrew situation right off the bat. But I picked Curse of Strahd for a lot of reasons. But that was my first foray into DMing. And like I said, it was definitely a hard learning experience, but it was a lot of fun.
That's wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit more about that decision-making process and why a module was appealing? Is it kind of the idea that you have this already built full world? Is it the iconic experience? People have heard of these modules and now they're actually getting to play them. I guess what went into the process of saying, I'm going to run a module and it's going to be Curse of Strahd in particular?
So like I kind of just was saying, because it was my first time DMing and I didn't really have a full grasp of what all that entailed, I wanted to start with something that was pre-written. I wanted to start with the guidelines, I guess, that Wizards of the Coast were like, hold your hand a little bit and say, here you go, this is where you go, this is what you tell your party. And I was researching different modules to run for my party. What really drew me to Curse of Strahd was how different it was than most other modules that were out at the time. It like tonally is a lot darker than a lot of them. It is almost a completely different genre. Like it nominally takes place within the Dungeons and Dragons universe, but it is definitely gothic horror where everything else is for sure more high fantasy. Obviously there's vampires in regular Dungeons and Dragons modules, but this is the main, thing, for lack of a better word, is vampires. It is like I said, it's definitely that gothic horror. It's definitely that it's less of sword and sorcery. We got my sword and my sorcery, and we're gonna go slay the dragon. We're gonna do some charisma saving rolls because otherwise we're gonna be charmed. And yeah, there's some fighting and there's some magic, but it's the vibe. The vibe is different entirely than in most campaigns, I think. So, and I'm not really sure why, after having played in one more quote-unquote normal campaign, I was like, let's depart from this. For some reason, I was like, let's get out of here, because obviously that was very fun. But it was kind of like everything else that we're gonna ever play is going to be this. It's going to be, I am going to go with my sword and my firebolt and kill something, kill a lich or kill a beholder. This was something that was different. So
yeah, it's extremely different from like Mines of Phandelver or the other classical modules where it kind of is you are doing a lot of hitting the bad guy with the sword, which is something that, correct me if I'm wrong, in Curse of Strahd, you're encouraged to have Strahd just show up in situations where the player can fight.
Yeah, so he will show up and basically taunt them, essentially, is what happens. And that's a lot of fun. He is a scene-chewing villain in a way that's a lot of fun to play, and a lot of fun, I think, to go against as a player. It's I don't know of any other, and obviously I'm not really an expert on the modules, but I don't know of any other module where the villain shows up and is like, I'm gonna kill you, bye. That doesn't really happen, it's not really what Tiamat is, or anything like that. It's just well we gotta do this linear storytelling of going to fight the bad guy. So
yeah, and it sounds like, from what we've talked about previously, it sounds like your players really enjoyed getting to play it. This did go well. They did enjoy that more non-linear story.
It did, unless they're way better actors than I give them all credit for. They all did have fun doing it, playing. They really got into it. I really, I had a great time. Like I said, it was a huge learning curve, a learning experience, playing it, running it. But part of the reason why it was so much fun is because I did have a really great party, who I was able to, take their actions and take their, thoughts and actions and turn that into something, work off of that and turn that into a better story. So.
Right, and in some ways kind of take this module story and make it more fun, more appealing, and kind of more the party's own version of Strahd. Can you give some examples of big divergences or even small fun ones from the story as written? So,
I made quite a few changes. A lot of the changes were really just for time constraints. I cut, one of the big cuts that I did was the Amber Temple, because the Amber Temple dungeon is so humongous, and at this point we had been playing for probably a year and a half, and I'm like, let's skip this one. That's gonna take us another 6 months just to get through that. I'd like to kill Strahd maybe within this decade. So I did cut a few dungeons, and then so one of the major changes that I made was, so the module as it is written is not the least homophobic thing in the canon, I think. There are several characters who are openly queer, in as much as it is possible for a character in a Dungeons and Dragons module to be openly queer. Namely Strahd. Strahd is bisexual, I guess. He has several girlfriends and at least one boyfriend that we're aware of living with him in his castle. And then there was another queer character, and he is basically the definition of the barrier gaze trope. And I was like, I don't know that I really like this. I didn't really know how to fix that for a while. I was just kind of like, let's just do it. Until we got to, there's a part with the Abbey. There's an Abbey of the Morning Lord, the, I guess, local god of the area. And there is an abbot there who is secretly a celestial who has been in Barovia for too long. And he has this idea that he's going to make a flesh golem. He's going to make a flesh golem and send it to Strahd, pretending that it is his great lost love, Tatiana. And my party got to this abbey and met this abbot, and they were like, this guy is creepy, and his plan is creepy, and we don't like it. We're gonna take this flesh golem with us, ostensibly to make his plan come to fruition, but we're not gonna do that because that's weird. We don't like that. So I think this flesh golem had been with my party for maybe 1 or 2 sessions before I kind of started to make her less of a, golem and more of a person. She's still a little zombie. She's still a zombie that is shaped like a dead person, made out of dead people. But I waved my little DM hands and I made her sentient. And at the end of our story, she and Irina got married, and it was beautiful.
I'm weeping. That is such a beautiful ending to the story.
It was ended with a wedding bells. Isn't that cute?
Honestly, having like the shambling undead horror marry one of the main characters, it fits well with the gothic horror vibe.
Yeah. So as I was kind of thinking about doing this, I was like, this is a little fucked up, but I think the story is a little fucked up in general. It is a gothic horror story. I think it fits with the vibe. Let's do it.
It fits with the vibe for sure. And also, once the party said this NPC is traveling with us, I feel like it's worth giving that NPC some personality and some individuality to make it a little more interesting.
Exactly. I didn't just want to have her sit there at their campfire and stare into nothing. Well, that's worse, I think. So, she's a person.
Cool. Again, she's a person, and now she's happily married.
Isn't that sweet? So, just
truly inspirational.
Don't put her in a warm house or anything.
She's that kind of flesh golem.
No,
she would go bad.
No, I didn't go into that at all. But okay. Hopefully not.
Cool. Well, this is sounding a little more horrifying now.
Yeah. I didn't want it to be sunshine and rainbows because that's not the story. The story is weird. So.
For sure. And it seems like with Strahd, that story and that gothic horror vibe are really what got prioritized the most. Like, that's what the authors are hoping that you as a DM are going to be like nailing consistently.
Yeah, I mean, Curse of Strahd is several decades old, and it itself is based largely on Dracula, which is 100 years old. And then they use all sorts of, I think, contemporary stories from the time Dracula was written to set the tone and to set just the tone of the world and how unpleasant it is, I think. So.
That sounds about right. And I guess... So on one hand, they're really getting that tone, they're helping you communicate it, but modules have some trade-offs. I guess, how do you feel about the aspects of the story that maybe got some some short shrift compared to if you'd written it yourself?
So, I think, like I said, there's some iffy homophobia in there in terms of the main villain being the only quote-unquote canonical queer character. And I think the whole overarching plot of it is that Strahd wants this girl, Irina, who is very young. I think she's like 19 years old or something like that, because she is the reincarnation of his lost love, I guess, Tatiana.
That sounds normal. That sounds fine.
Super normal, super fine. Yeah. It's a little, it's iffy from the get-go. So, and I think that there's no real getting around that, in terms of, I as the DM want to make this less creepy. I think you can, like I did, stop the game or do a session 0 at some point and say, listen, I want everyone to have fun. I want everyone to have a good time. This is for fun. Nobody is going to be sexually assaulted, either in this game or off-screen in any capacity. So I think that making Irina, I have a lot of issues with the term agency in terms of fictional characters, but giving her more to do while she traveled with my party, and keeping her from being the sexy lamp of the story, and I think adding my weird flesh golem character kind of helped, if you'll excuse the pun, flesh them out. Certary.
That was terrible. I took psychic damage.
Helped to flesh them out as fully fleshed out characters.
Wait, who all was with your party then? Because they had the flesh column, they had Irina. Did they have a lot of NPCs traveling with them?
Great question. So one of the major things I learned as a DM is that you want to limit the amount of NPCs that travel with your party, because that's a huge pain in the ass. The more people you have that you have to be. So Irina did travel with them. Her brother, Ismark, traveled with them for a time. And a late character later on, Esmeralda, started traveling with them for the latter half of the game. The Flesh Golem. Luckily, I could initially play the Flesh Golem very simply, but good lord, it was.
So, like, by the end of the campaign, you were half the party.
I was half of the party. Mistakes were made. It was not the best series of decisions.
There's one of the episodes of NADPOD's Dungeon Court. They suggest that if your party keeps trying to bring along more followers, give them a speed of 5 feet. You know, just make them huge liabilities to take with you anywhere.
So at one point, I made near the end, I made something up. I made something up that said, Ismark, he got a letter from the town of Barovia that he's like ostensibly in charge of now that his father is dead. I gotta get back there. There's an emergency. They need me. And
oh boy, so this is very much like Poochie going back to his home planet.
I wish that Poochie had gone back to his home planet, very much. So a member of my party was like, I'm gonna do a charisma roll. Convince him to stay. And he rolled a 27. And I was like, get out of my house. So, for the bit, I allowed Ismark to stay. But in the future, they get one NPC max at a time. Lessons were learned.
Were the NPCs involved in combat and everything as well?
Yes, they were. I did not involve the flesh golem in combat. Did not do that because that was just too much. I couldn't do it. But I gave Irina a sword. Ismark had a sword. They had like basic stats. Esmeralda is a much better fighter in terms of how she's written. Everything was a little bloated after the party started really partying. So
sure. And did the campaign keep the tone, or were the players kind of shifting to a different tone at that point?
So when I say that the tone of the game is very gothic horror, very very creepy, that did retain itself throughout. However, my party, my group of friends, as it were, they're very silly. So even though the game was a little darker, was a little on the negative side, things were happening that were unpleasant. The jokes didn't really ever stop. I think they might have been like, well, that's fucked up, or something like that. But and I think, I mean, that's kind of what I want. I want everyone to have fun. I mean, I know that you, especially with a game like this, you want to keep the environment going, and you want to keep the setting, intact of well, this is a weird place, this is a creepy place, but
right.
Again, I want everyone to have fun, and they were, even at the expense of maybe a little of the creepiness. But what can you do?
I mean, as long as you got to keep a little bit of it, that sounds like an accomplishment with this party.
Yeah. Getting through a whole session is sometimes an accomplishment. So sometimes it's.
I mean, I'm imagining a whole session of just you as 4 different NPCs having a conversation.
Oh boy, I never did that. Thankfully, sorry, I didn't mean to cover my mic there. I never did that. Thankfully, I never had to have a conversation with just me. But it was definitely more of a challenge than I was ready for.
And going into it, your players knew what tone they were going to get.
Yeah, they did. I think, again, learning my lessons, I think I could have done a better session 0 of this is what the kind of thing you can expect from the game. But they did have a basic, gist of what they were getting into.
That makes sense. Yeah, I feel like there's almost a session -1 sometimes that has to happen too, where it's just like, hey, yeah, no, session 0 session 0 will iron out expectations for the game and coordinate characters and stuff like that, but there almost needs to be a session -1 where you're more, hey, is this like the vibe of a game that you'd want to play?
Yeah, so as history's biggest fool, I have decided that I'm going to do it again with a slightly different group of people.
You're going to do Curse of Strahd again?
I am, yeah. I actually, a couple days ago, ran Death House, the one-shot module at the beginning of Curse of Strahd. I ran that for a group of friends, and we kind of got to talking, and one thing led to another, and I foolishly agreed to do another Curse of Strahd run.
Oh no.
So but I'm kind of looking forward to it. I did, like I said, I've ran shorter campaigns since then. I've learned a lot just from running it the first time. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. But I definitely, when I start it, am going to have a full session 0 where I say, hey everybody, here are the main things in this game that are, iffy.
Yeah.
Know that going in. I don't foresee anyone saying, oh, I don't really want to play, but I think that just a warning that things get a little dicey, a little dicier than your average. Your character might die.
Right.
Just based on the basic plot of the module. So.
Right, 100%. So while it is going to be undisputably hell for you to run the module again, it's great for us for a couple reasons. First off, it means you can be a guest on season 2. But secondly, I think it would be interesting to hear more about what you're going to change. And, what, in addition to the session 0 you mentioned previously, what refinements or updates you'd like to make compared to the last time you ran this module?
So, I intend specifically to go into the places, the dungeons that I skipped last time. If not just for me, for my own edification of eventually I'll run this whole campaign, whether or not it's in bits and pieces. But I believe I'm going to have at least one person joining me from the previous campaign. So I'd like to make things, obviously he'll know the bare bones of it, and some things will have to remain the same, but I'd like to make things a little bit, more interesting for him. So we're definitely going to the Amber Temple. That'll be fun for everybody. And I do intend to keep, I really like my flesh golem. I love it. So I intend to keep her. Let's see, I haven't gotten too far into the specific planning of it. I do intend at my session 0 or session 1, depending on how things pan out, reading them that intro that I read at the beginning of this podcast. That obviously was based on my original, but in the intervening years I've lost the original intro that I did. And I really like the one that I wrote for you guys. So so that's gonna make an appearance for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I look forward. Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I look forward to hearing how it goes. Yeah, I think you really nail the tone of Curse of Strahd with that, and it'll be fun to finally see how that dungeon goes.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about in Strahd. I guess how the module is written, and one thing that I find cool but also frustrating is that often the official Wizards of the Coast modules have magic that doesn't really work like spells are supposed to, basically. Yes. In the DM guide.
Yeah, so this was especially an issue when it came to Strahd himself, because he can do things that no other character essentially can do in any game that I've played. And there's not a lot. I've seen people online say, well, he can do this because of this reason that I just made up. So, which doesn't, sure. At one point during the final fight with him, he turned into a fog to escape the party, and the wizard in our party cast counterspell, and I had to say like it doesn't work. And counterspell, I don't think that the player rolls to see if it hits. It's just, oh, I cast counterspell, and then suddenly that thing that you tried to do doesn't work. So it's not like I could fudge his roll and say, oh, you rolled a...
Oh, a 28? I'm sorry, that's not good enough.
Yeah. So there's just no roll for that. And so I just had to say, it doesn't work, and Strahd, in mist form, flees up the stairs. I'm sorry. And I think that, and maybe adding this into my next campaign of Strahd would be a good little piece of world building, and make everything a little more well-rounded as to like why he can do these things that don't seem to obey the rules, the quote-unquote rules of the world.
Because it's not really explained or justified in the text in any way.
It's not. It's just, Strahd can do this. Bye. Go to hell. And I think that might even be a real missed opportunity for Wizards of the Coast, the authors of Strahd, to explain that in a way that makes sense to the world and to the story. And I think that there's definitely a way to do that. So,
do you have any idea how you're going to handle this next time you run this module?
It'll probably be something along the lines of, so the way the setting is Barovia was split off of the main world. Basically, when Strahd became a vampire, kind of. It's a little more complicated than that, but I won't, bog down the recording. So essentially, Barovia is tied to Strahd in a way that I don't know that it makes him godlike, but it definitely makes him more than your average guy, I guess. He's more than your average lich, even. He is tied to the land, and the land is tied to him. So I'll probably work in something like that, where if he does something within the realm of Barovia, it's basically his rules. Haven't quite gotten there yet, but we'll figure it out.
That does seem like a solid justification, and it seems like you could have a lot of flavor of how he's physically tied to Barovia. It's also, sometimes I see things like this in a module, and it's like, if I told my players, nope, this is just immune to all your abilities, there's nothing you can do about it, they would throw things at me, like they'd physically injure me. I live in terror of my players. Whereas when the official modules have that, it's just like, yep, that's part of the unique charm of Strahd.
Yeah, so I feel like it's important to explain the insane thing that just happened in a way that I wasn't really prepared to do the last time. Because obviously I did go off book considerably, but I like I have been saying, I was still, a very fresh DM. I was still really relying on that module to hold my hand through everything. And when they were just like, Strahd can turn into mist and at will, and this isn't affected by counterspell, I was just like, okay. I don't know what to tell you. Luckily, nobody threw anything at me, so.
That's good. I'm envious of your players. At the other end of the scale, there's magic that is legitimately very cool and very inventive, like the Taroka cards.
Yes. The Taroka cards, were a lot of fun, because they allowed me to guide my characters in the right direction, in a way that allowed me to cut out the things that I needed to cut out, that I knew I was cutting out from the beginning. Essentially, they guide you to the MacGuffins that you want in order to fight Strahd, and they guide you to a helper. In my game, this was Esmeralda, mentioned before, and they guide you to where Strahd is in Castle Ravenloft, where Strahd will be when the party finally goes to Castle Ravenloft.
Got it.
So, and that was a lot of fun. I did not buy the card deck that Wizards of the Coast sells because it was like $30 on top of the $50 spent on the book. But I was able to make some cool looking cards out of the art they had in the back of their book. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Just for the audience members who aren't familiar, can you talk through Taroka cards briefly, just for the context?
Oh yeah, sorry. So Taroka cards, they're basically tarot cards. There's, I think, 30 or so of them, and they function in the world essentially like tarot cards. There were, and again, when we're talking about things to call back here, things that are a little iffier, a little more problematic, they kind of are the realm of an ethnic group of people in Barovia called the Vistani, who are very clearly Romani XPs. And that was, again, because I'm not of Romani descent, that was something that I was just like, let's do my best to make this a little less iffy here. And I don't know that I succeeded, but I don't think I failed. So with the Taroka in game, I kind of had it be a sort of like a card game that various people in the background of scenes would be playing, and I kind of tried to add it as a just a little piece of stage setting to various scenes. There's really only one Taroka reading that's important that guides the players.
And so, in the game, you did have the readings. Like, the players did do Taroka readings.
Yes. Yeah, so, and that, the way that it's written in the module, they tell you, as the DM, you can have it be completely random. The certain cards represent certain characters or places or MacGuffins. You can have it be completely random, or you can guide the reading, which is what the way I did. I probably will do that again, because I think that it gives you more control as the DM over the story, and where you're gonna try and get your character players to go. I don't know. It must be, I don't know, maybe a very experienced GM could do just your random reading, Taroka deck reading, where they just send their characters off into the world. but that I don't know that I'm there yet.
That kind of randomness over big plot points is kind of tricky, right? Like, this is why people want the deck of many things in their game. Players think it'll be a cool idea, but then when they actually get it and they draw a card that just completely changes the story, it's like, well, I don't know if I really wanted that.
Yeah, yeah, there was sorry, we had so some of our characters or some of our players were the same characters from the Mines of Phandelver game. It just carried over, and that was a lot of fun because I had played with them before as these characters. I knew about them as characters, and I knew the development that they already had. But I also, and again, learning, I let them have all of their stuff from the previous game. And one of those things was a genie in a bottle. And thankfully, nobody ever brought it out. But I kind of had it hanging over my head the entire time. Where I was kind of like, I'd be planning a session and think, okay, what if they bring out that frickin' genie? What do I do? So again, you learn, and you say, leave the genie at home, please.
Did you have any plans in the back of your mind? Like, what would you have done if Strahd shows up and they're just like, boom, genie?
So if that had happened, I would have just said, that doesn't work because jazz hands.
Because Strahd is immune to genie damage.
Yeah, he's immune to genie damage. Yes, exactly. So
all of you, though, you're going to take 8d6 genie damage for pissing me off right now. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but like I just did Death House, like I said. I did allow one of the characters had the Sun Sword, which is an item in Curse of Strahd. He had a Sun Sword from a previous game, and I was like, you know what? You can have it. And I think that that was I knew that wasn't going to break the game, and I knew that I had enough confidence in myself as a DM at this point to say I can handle, whatever you do with that.
You gotta let your players have their cool swords.
I think cool swords are a real backbone of Dungeons and Dragons in general. So, obviously, in certain cool swords might again break the game, but I think allowing them their cool swords is very important.
Hell yeah! Do you have any? I guess as we start to wrap up, do you have any closing thoughts about this campaign? How it went? What would you tell other people who want to run Curse of Strahd in particular?
I would say don't be a first-time DM. You might think, oh, it has a little module in the front. I can run that and get a handle on things. You can't. Don't do that. I think other than that, besides that, the number one thing I learned was, you have to be flexible. As a DM, you have to, even while planning, and not even just while you're playing, you have to have a real handle on where you want your players to end up and how you want them to get there, and you have to guide them that way, and that might not be what you initially planned, and it might definitely not be what Wizards of the Coast have planned for you and your party. So flexibility, I think, is definitely the name of the game. I
think that's a wonderful piece of advice, and I hope that it's a smoother experience your second time DMing this module.
As do I, for sure.
Do you have any, other than the module itself, do you have any, I guess, inspiration, any media that you were consuming around the time of when you ran it, or now for this upcoming campaign, that has kind of, shaped the aesthetic you want, or given you some guidance or inspiration?
Yeah, I had read Dracula years ago. I didn't reread it or anything for this campaign, but I definitely kept Dracula in mind for that. Frankenstein, obviously, there's with our flesh golem friend, that whole idea takes an appearance, and I kind of made it more Frankenstein-y than it's even written. So there's also things like works that are inspired by Dracula, whether that's directly like something like Castlevania, that's like a visual representation of the story, or something like Carmilla, which is a contemporary novel around that same time.
That makes a ton of sense. And yeah, do you have any, I guess, any resources you'd recommend for people other than the module itself? Is there anything that, any tools that were particularly helpful?
So I think the thing that I most had trouble with was Strahd's castle, Ravenloft, is a mess. It's a mess. And trying to read through the descriptions of it, where each room is numbered, and they're like, 19C has a secret passageway that leads to 30A.
Spoiler alert.
And they're and it's a mess. And there's a map, but the map makes things worse, I think. So I found via the Curse of Strahd subreddit an intrepid individual had made a model of Castle Ravenloft in Minecraft.
Whoa!
It is. It's a piece of art, to be honest with you. Each room has a little signpost out front that says what number it corresponds to in the book.
Wow!
Yeah, someone spent some time on it for sure. So I use that. I don't think I showed it to my players, but I definitely had that on deck for in case I needed to, in case they were confused by my description or by the description that the book gave, because as it's written, it's confusing. For sure.
It's a mess, yeah. I'm gonna put it up for the two of you to see. Riley, this is what the map looks like, just as an aside.
So this is Death House, and this is even the module. So it's funny that you put this up because
this isn't even the one you're talking about.
That's not even Castle Ravenloft. This is for the mini module. So it's even funny that you put that up, because when I did Death House a couple days ago, I cut out 2 full levels of Death House because I knew we wouldn't be able to finish in like the 4 or 5 hours that we had. And I'm really glad we did, because we wouldn't have. We would still be doing it. So
this map, I think, is the one that...
Yes.
And it's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare, and this is even more linear than the map in the that's included in the module. The map that's included in the module is, I don't know, 2 feet by 3 feet.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's big, and it's confusing. So I was very glad to find that, because it was a headache every single time I would start to try and plan my Castle Ravenloft sessions. It was just like Alright, now you guys are... I think you're in a hallway, but I'm not sure. I think you're in a bedroom, but it could be not the bedroom. Who knows?
No, absolutely. We will link to this
Yes.
this Minecraft castle in the show notes.
Anybody that gets any... I just have to tell everybody about this Minecraft tour of Castle Ravenloft, because it's... otherwise, it is hard. We'll just say it's hard.
Also, it's been such a pleasure talking with you today.
It's been
Your
great.
campaign sounds like a ton of fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's all for this week.
Thanks, Kyros, for taking the time to chat with us about your campaign.
I've been Jake behind the mic.
And I'm Production Master Riley. And if you're listening to this podcast under a full moon, you're now afflicted by a terrible curse.
Join us next week when we chat about the oldest playable edition of Dungeons & Dragons.
For more on the show, including links to all our social media, visit folderfrequencies.com/campaignspotlight.